Ex-husband invited his poor black ex-wife to his wedding. She arrived in a billionaire's jet with his twins. The matte black envelope arrived with gold lettering and a date that made Selena's hands shake. May 12th, their anniversary. Nathaniel was marrying Claire Whitmore on the exact day he'd once promised Selena forever. And he wanted her there to watch. Wanted their 3-year-old twins there to smile for the cameras at his society wedding. She stared at that invitation for hours before making a decision that would shatter his perfect day. She was going to that wedding, but not as the poor, broken ex-wife he expected, and what she did next he never saw coming. If you're ready to enjoy this story, click subscribe, like this video, and comment what time it is that you're watching this video. Now let's get back to the story. The envelope was matte black. Expensive. The kind Nathaniel Brooks always said required a certain pedigree to carry off properly. Selena Ward stared at it on her desk. Sleek, embossed with gold lettering, delivered by certified courier to the address of her emerging startup. This wasn't a contract. This wasn't a partnership proposal. This was a wedding invitation. Nathaniel was getting married. To Claire Whitmore. Old money, society balls, the exact kind of woman he'd told Selena she could never become. And he wanted her there. Wanted her to watch. To witness. To see him finally achieve the legacy marriage he'd always craved. The note inside was handwritten. Elegant calligraphy. His signature at the bottom. With pleasure, Mr. Nathaniel Brooks invites Mrs. Selena Ward and children. And children. Her breath caught. Aiden and Ariel were invited. The twins he'd barely fought for. The children he'd walked away from 3 years ago when the divorce was finalized and he chose his empire over his family. Now he wanted them dressed up, present, smiling for the cameras at his society wedding. She read the date. Then read it again. Had to be sure. The wedding was set for May 12th. Their anniversary. The day she'd stood beside him in a courthouse and promised forever. The day she'd believed partnership meant something. He had chosen their anniversary for his wedding to someone else. That's when Selena made her decision. She was going to that wedding. But not the way he expected. Not as the exceptional little wife he'd left behind. Not as the woman who'd shrunk herself to fit into his world. She was going to show him exactly what he discarded. And she had 6 months of strategic rebuilding, and one very powerful billionaire investor to help her do it. Her name was Selena Ward, and this was the story of how she arrived at her ex-husband's wedding in a private jet with his twins and reclaimed every ounce of power he thought he'd taken from her. Stay with her, because what happened when she stepped off that plane? He never saw it coming. The envelope was matte black. Expensive. The kind Nathaniel always said required pedigree. Selena Ward stared at it on her desk at the modest office space of her consulting startup. The room was quiet, too quiet. Aiden and Ariel were at preschool. Her coffee had gone cold an hour ago. She hadn't moved. The invitation sat there like a living thing, taunting her. She picked it up, put it down, picked it up again. Her phone sat beside it, screen dark. She could call her business partner. She could tear the whole thing into pieces, throw it in the trash, pretend it never arrived. Instead, she opened her laptop. The email was still there. The one from the billionaire philanthropist who'd been courting her for a board seat in his luxury tech company. She hadn't answered yet. Hadn't been sure if she was ready for that level of visibility. She looked back at the invitation. Mr. Nathaniel Brooks and Ms. Claire Whitmore request the honor of your presence. Her hand shook. The heavy cardstock trembled between her fingers. There was a note tucked inside, handwritten, in his precise script. The same handwriting that used to leave sticky notes on the bathroom mirror. The same handwriting that signed the settlement papers that gave her barely enough to survive. Selena, I hope you'll come. The children should see both their parents moving forward. Both of us happy. With respect, Nathaniel. With respect. She read it 3 times. Each time the words made less sense. With respect. After the affair she'd pretended not to notice. With respect. After he'd fought her for every dollar in the divorce while his lawyer buried her in legal fees. With respect. After he told her she wasn't quite society wife material and walked away to find someone who was, she checked the date again. Had to be certain. May 12th. Her coffee cup rattled against the saucer. May 12th. Their anniversary. The day she'd worn a simple dress and promised to love him forever. The day she'd believed in partnership, in building something together. He had chosen their anniversary for his wedding to Claire Whitmore. The invitation slipped from her fingers, landed face up on the desk. A memory hit her. 3 years ago, almost to the day, Nathaniel had come home late from the office. She'd been in the kitchen of their brownstone. The twins were barely walking, babbling to each other in their shared language, stacking wooden blocks into towers. She'd been preparing his favorite meal, trying to keep the marriage alive, trying to be enough. He'd stood in the doorway, loosened his tie, looked at her with eyes that were already gone. "Selena, we need to talk." She'd known before he said it. Had known for months, maybe longer. The way he'd stopped asking about her day. The way he came home later and later, smelling of expensive perfume that wasn't hers. The way his phone was suddenly always face down on the counter. "I'm not happy," he'd said, as if that explained everything. As if happiness was something he was owed and she'd failed to deliver. She'd stood there with a dish towel in her hands, Aiden and Ariel building towers at her feet, and felt her entire world tilt sideways. Not collapse, not yet. Just tilt, like the floor had become unreliable. "I need someone who understands this world, Selena. Someone who can stand beside me at these events without me having to explain everything. Someone who fits. Someone who fits." 3 words that meant, you don't belong. You never did. But sitting in her office 3 years later, staring at that wedding invitation, Selena realized the breaking had started long before that night. It had started the day she met him. She'd been 24. Brilliant, ambitious, 3 years into a mathematics doctorate at Columbia. Her dissertation was on predictive modeling in financial systems. Dense, complex work that made her professors nod approvingly and her peers avoid eye contact. She'd loved it. Loved the clarity of numbers, the elegance of proof, the way equations revealed hidden truths. Nathaniel Brooks had walked into a university fundraiser like he owned the building. Maybe he did. His family's foundation had donated the wing they were standing in. He was 28, newly promoted to VP at his father's investment firm, wearing a suit that probably cost more than her entire year's stipend. He'd approached her at the wine table, asked what she studied, actually listened when she explained her research. Most men's eyes glazed over when she talked about stochastic processes and risk assessment algorithms. Nathaniel's eyes had lit up. "That's exactly what we need," he'd said. "Someone who can see patterns where everyone else sees chaos." She should have known then, should have heard what he really meant. Someone I can use. But she'd been young and flattered and tired of being the smartest person in rooms that didn't value smart. Nathaniel made her feel seen. Made her feel like her brain was an asset instead of an intimidation. They dated for 8 months.
Fast, intense, intoxicating.
He took her to restaurants where the menus had no prices. Introduced her to people whose names she recognized from Forbes lists. Made her feel like she was stepping into a bigger, brighter world. When he proposed, she'd said yes without hesitation. Her advisor had pulled her aside the next day. "Selena, you're 2 years from finishing your doctorate. Are you sure about this timing?" She'd been sure. So sure. Because Nathaniel had promised she could do both. Finish her degree, build her career. He'd said he wanted a partner, not a trophy wife. The first lie of many. The wedding was small, intimate. His family had made polite noises about waiting until she finished school and making sure this was the right fit. Translation: she's not one of us. Selena had ignored it. She was marrying Nathaniel, not his family. The trouble started slowly. Nathaniel's career accelerated. Bigger deals, longer hours, more travel. He needed her at events, galas, fundraisers, client dinners. Just this once, became just this week, became, I really need you there, Selena. Her dissertation stalled. Meetings with her advisor became harder to schedule. Research time evaporated into dress fittings and small talk with women who asked what she did and glazed over when she tried to explain. Then came Claire Whitmore. Claire had always been there, hovering at the edges of Nathaniel's world like ambient music, present but not demanding attention. Old money, impeccable breeding, the kind of woman who knew which fork to use without thinking about it. She served on the same boards as Nathaniel's mother, summered in the Hamptons, spoke fluent French and played tennis at clubs that had waiting lists measured in decades. First, Claire had been kind, offering fashion advice, teaching Selena the unwritten rules of Nathaniel's social circle. Don't talk about work at dinner parties. It makes people uncomfortable. Always send handwritten thank you notes within 48 hours. When someone asks about your background, keep it light. They're being polite, not actually interested. Selena had been grateful, naive enough to think Claire was helping. But Claire had been doing something else entirely, showing Nathaniel exactly what he could have instead. Grace where Selena was awkward, ease where Selena was effort, belonging where Selena was always trying. By the time Selena got pregnant with the twins, she'd abandoned her doctorate. Just temporarily, she'd told herself. Just until the babies are older. But she knew. Deep down, she knew. The math corridor was closed to her now. She'd chosen a different equation, one where she was always solving for Nathaniel's happiness instead of her own. The twins arrived. Aiden first, then Ariel 3 minutes later. Perfect, healthy, beautiful. Selena had looked at their tiny faces and felt something shift. A fierce, protective love that had nothing to do with Nathaniel, nothing to do with his world. These children were hers. Fully, completely hers. Nathaniel had been a good father in those early days. Attentive, proud. But as the babies grew from infants to toddlers, as Selena's body changed and her time fractured into feeding schedules and nap routines, something else grew too. Distance. He started traveling more, working later. Claire's name appeared more frequently in conversation. Claire suggested this restaurant. Claire mentioned you might like this interior designer. Claire thinks. Selena should have fought harder, should have demanded truth. But she was tired, bone-tired, twin mother tired, trying to fit into a world that didn't want her tired. The affair, when she discovered it, wasn't even surprising, just confirming. She'd found a receipt in his jacket pocket. The Windsor Hotel. À suite. Champagne. 2 glasses. A date when he'd supposedly been in Boston for business. She'd confronted him quietly after the twins were asleep. No screaming. No theatrics. Just, I know about Claire. He'd had the decency to look guilty. For about 30 seconds. Then came the justifications. The explanations. The subtle reframing that made it somehow her fault. You don't understand the pressure I'm under. We've grown apart. You're focused on the kids. And I need someone who fits. Selena had finished for him. He'd nodded. Actually nodded. Like she'd finally understood the problem. The divorce was clinical. Nathaniel's lawyers were efficient. Ruthless. Selena got the twins, weekends only for him, and a settlement that barely covered rent in a decent neighborhood. His assets were tied up in complex trusts. His income was variable. His lawyers had folders of documentation proving he was worth far less on paper than he actually was. She could have fought, could have hired better lawyers, dragged it out, made it ugly. But she'd looked at Aiden and Ariel and made a different choice. Dignity, speed, freedom. She walked out of that marriage with her children, $700 a month, and absolutely nothing else. No doctorate, no career, no savings. Just the twins and the unshakable certainty that she would never, ever let anyone make her small again. Sitting in her office now, invitation still trembling in her hand, Selena remembered something else from that final night. Something Nathaniel had said as she was packing. "You'll be fine, Selena. You're smart, resilient. You'll figure it out." He'd meant it as reassurance, a benediction, permission to disappear quietly. What he hadn't understood, what he still didn't understand, was that he'd just handed her the greatest gift of her life. Underestimation. She'd figured it out, all right, and now he was going to see exactly what she'd become. The first year after the divorce, Selena survived on spite and instant ramen. She'd rented a 2-bedroom apartment in a neighborhood that was up-and-coming. Real estate code for "you'll hear sirens at night, but the rent is manageable." The twins shared 1 bedroom. She worked from the other, a converted closet barely large enough for a desk and a laptop. The laptop was 5 years old. The chair wobbled. The internet connection dropped during video calls. But it was hers. Every struggle, every limitation, every frustration. Completely, entirely hers. She'd started with what she knew. Numbers. Data. The predictive modeling work she'd abandoned for Nathaniel's world. Turns out, small businesses desperately needed someone who could read patterns in their financials, forecast cash flow, identify risks before they became catastrophes. Her first client was a boutique marketing agency run by 2 women who paid her in installments and recommended her to everyone they knew. Her second client was a tech startup that couldn't afford a full-time analyst but needed someone to make sense of their user data. Selena worked after the twins went to bed. Worked while they watched cartoons on Saturday mornings. Worked during nap time, during playdates, during every stolen moment she could find. She built spreadsheets that turned chaos into clarity. Created dashboards that made complex data feel simple. Wrote reports that told stories instead of just listing numbers. The work was good. The money was not. She failed constantly. Lost clients who wanted cheaper. Lost pitches to consultants with better credentials. Lost sleep, lost confidence. Lost count of how many times she wanted to quit. But she didn't. Because Aiden and Ariel were watching, learning, absorbing the lesson she needed them to know. You get back up. Always you get back up. The turning point came 18 months after the divorce. A former Columbia classmate reached out, now a CTO at a mid-sized fintech company. They needed a strategic consultant who could bridge the gap between their technical team and their business objectives. Someone who spoke both languages fluently. "I remember your dissertation work," he'd said over coffee. "You saw things nobody else could see. We need that." The contract was 6 months. The pay was enough to move to a better apartment, buy the twins new beds, stop rationing groceries. More than that, it was visibility. Suddenly Selena wasn't just a freelancer scrambling for clients. She was the consultant who'd helped a fintech company increase efficiency by 40% and reduce risk exposure by half. Other companies noticed. Bigger contracts followed. A healthcare startup, a logistics firm, a boutique investment group that needed someone to audit their portfolio strategy. Selena hired her first employee, then a second. Rented actual office space, modest but professional. Had business cards printed that said Ward Analytics in clean, confident letters. She wasn't rich, not even close, but she was building something. And for the first time since the divorce, she felt like herself. Not Nathaniel's ex-wife. Not someone's failed version of a society wife. Just Selena. Smart, capable, relentless. Then Julian Cross walked into her life. He'd reached out through his assistant. A brief, formal email. Mr. Cross was interested in discussing a potential collaboration. Would she be available for a meeting? Selena had Googled him immediately. Julian Cross, billionaire philanthropist, made his fortune in luxury tech, high-end consumer electronics that made Apple products look budget-friendly. Notoriously private, rarely photographed, known for investing in companies led by underestimated founders. Their first meeting was in a penthouse office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Julian was in his late 50s, silver-haired, dressed in expensive casual. the kind of wealth that didn't need to announce itself. "I've been following your work," he'd said, no preamble. "You helped restructure the fintech company's entire risk assessment model. Most consultants would have recommended incremental changes. You rebuilt the foundation." Selena had nodded, unsure where this was going. "I'm launching a new venture," Julian continued. "Luxury tech meets sustainable innovation. I need someone on the board who understands data strategy, who can see 3 moves ahead, who isn't afraid to challenge assumptions." He'd looked at her directly. "I need someone who's had to fight for everything they've built, because those are the people who don't waste opportunities." He'd offered her a board seat, equity, a salary that made her physically dizzy, and something else, something more valuable than money: legitimacy. A seat at a table where decisions were made, where power was real, where her voice would matter. "Why me?" she'd asked. Julian had smiled. "Because Nathaniel Brooks told someone at a cocktail party that you'd never amount to anything without him. And I make it a policy to invest in people that fools underestimate." The transformation wasn't instant, but it was intentional. Selena hired a stylist not to become someone else, but to look like the person she'd always been underneath the shrinking. Tailored suits in bold colors, silk blouses that meant business, heels that added 3 inches and a decade of authority. She practiced saying no. Short, clean, unapologetic. No to clients who didn't respect her rates. No to meetings that wasted her time. No to anyone who treated her like she should be grateful just to be in the room. Her contracts got tighter. Her rates went up. Her reputation preceded her. Selena Ward didn't just consult. She transformed. And she didn't work cheap. But every night, regardless of how important the meeting or how crucial the deadline, Selena came home. Made dinner with Aiden and Ariel. Read bedtime stories. Lay between them in the dark answering questions about why stars twinkle and whether clouds have feelings. The twins kept her human. Kept her focused on what actually mattered. Aiden's gap-toothed grin when she picked him up from school. Ariel's tiny hand slipping into hers during crosswalks. The way they both called her Mama, in voices that made every struggle worth it. She was building an empire, but she was raising humans first. The invitation to Nathaniel's wedding had arrived 6 months into her board position. 6 months of establishing herself in Julian's company. 6 months of proving she belonged. Now, standing in her apartment, upgraded, spacious, flooded with light, Selena watched Aiden and Ariel try on their custom outfits. Designer clothes tailored perfectly. Aiden in a small suit that made him look like a tiny CEO. Ariel in a dress that sparkled when she twirled. "Do I look fancy, Mama?" Ariel asked, spinning. "You look powerful," Selena said. "There's a difference." Aiden tugged at his collar. "Will Daddy be surprised we're coming?" Selena smiled, a small, knowing curve. "I think Daddy will be very surprised." Her phone rang. Julian's name on the screen. She answered. "Selena Ward." "Ms. Ward." Julian's voice was warm, amused. "Just wanted to confirm. Your jet's ready. We'll have you wheels up by 7 a.m. The flight crew knows to cater to the twins. I've also arranged for a photographer to document the arrival. For business purposes, of course." Selena looked at her reflection in the window, at the woman she'd become, at the children who'd saved her by giving her someone to fight for. "Julian," she said quietly. "Thank you." "Don't thank me," he replied. "You did this. I just gave you the plane." She ended the call, looked at Aiden and Ariel, both beaming in their outfits. "All right," she said. "Let's go show Daddy what happens when you underestimate a Ward." Ariel grabbed her hand. "Are we going on an airplane?" Selena smiled. "Not just an airplane, baby. A jet. A very, very nice jet. Tomorrow, Nathaniel Brooks would marry Claire Whitmore. And tomorrow, he would learn exactly what he'd thrown away. Tonight, Selena Ward packed their bags and felt something she hadn't felt in years. anticipation. The game wasn't revenge. It was revelation. And she was ready. The jet cut through the morning sky like a blade through silk. Selena sat by the window, watching clouds scatter beneath them. Aiden was asleep against her shoulder, his small body warm and trusting. Ariel pressed her nose to the opposite window, mesmerized by the world shrinking below. "We're so high, Mama," Ariel whispered. "Reverent." "We are," Selena agreed. "And we're landing exactly where we're supposed to." The flight attendant, hired specifically for this trip, appeared with juice boxes and croissants. The cabin was cream leather and polished wood, the kind of luxury that didn't scream wealth so much as whisper it confidently. Julian hadn't just sent a jet. He'd sent a statement. Selena checked her reflection in her phone screen. The all-white suit was perfection. Tailored within an inch of its life, structured shoulders, silk lapels that caught light like water. Not a wedding dress. Not even close. This was armor disguised as elegance. Her hair was pulled back in a sleek low bun. Diamond studs, her grandmother's, the only jewelry she'd kept from her old life, glinted at her ears. She looked expensive, powerful, untouchable. But most importantly, she looked free. Aiden stirred, blinked awake. "Are we almost there?" "Almost," Selena said, smoothing his hair. "Remember what we talked about?" "Be polite," Aiden recited. "Say hello to Daddy. Don't run inside. And hold your hand," Ariel added, reaching for Selena's fingers. "Exactly." Selena squeezed their small hands. "You two are the most important people at this wedding. Not the bride. Not the groom. You. Don't forget that." The pilot's voice crackled over the intercom. "Ms. Ward, we're beginning our descent. We'll be landing in 15 minutes. 15 minutes. Selena's heart kicked once, hard, then settled into a steady, determined rhythm. Showtime. The private airfield was pristine. Manicured grass, sleek hangars, the kind of place where money landed quietly. But today, it was anything but quiet. The wedding party had clearly planned their arrivals for maximum visual impact. The tarmac near the main hangar was lined with luxury vehicles. Bentleys, Rolls-Royces, a vintage Aston Martin that probably cost more than Selena's first apartment. Guests milled about in designer attire, champagne flutes already in hand, photographers circling like well-dressed sharks. At the center of it all stood Nathaniel Brooks. He was next to his jet, smaller than Julian's, Selena noted with quiet satisfaction. Dressed in a tuxedo that fit him like a second skin. His jaw was sharp, his hair perfectly styled, his posture radiating the confidence of a man who'd built his empire exactly as planned. Beside him, Claire Whitmore looked like she'd stepped out of a bridal magazine. White gown, cathedral train, veil catching the breeze like captured light. They were posing for photos. The perfect couple. The perfect wedding. The perfect life. Then Selena's jet appeared on the horizon. It descended smoothly, engines purring rather than roaring. The sound of wealth so profound it didn't need to announce itself. The plane was larger than Nathaniel's. Newer. The kind of aircraft that didn't charter by the hour because the people who flew in it owned entire fleets. Conversations on the tarmac stuttered. Heads turned. Someone lowered their champagne glass. "Who's that?" a woman in a peach fascinator asked. "I don't know," her companion replied. "That's not on the arrival schedule." The jet touched down with barely a whisper, taxied smoothly, and came to rest exactly parallel to Nathaniel's plane. A deliberate positioning, a visual comparison. Nathaniel's jet looked suddenly ordinary. The cabin door opened, steps descended, and Selena Ward stepped into the light. She'd timed it perfectly. The sun was at the exact angle to backlight her, turning her white suit luminous. She paused at the top of the stairs, one hand on the railing, surveying the scene below with the calm assessment of someone who knew exactly how much space she occupied in the world. Then Aiden appeared beside her, small hand gripping hers. Ariel on the other side, her dress catching the breeze. The three of them, a unit, a statement, a visual that no photographer could resist. The cameras went wild. Click, click, click. Selena descended slowly, not rushed, not hesitant. Each step measured, purposeful. She'd practiced this in her living room the night before, Ariel giggling as Selena walked back and forth in heels, finding the exact rhythm that conveyed power without arrogance. She reached the tarmac. The twins flanked her like small, radiant bodyguards. The entire wedding party had stopped pretending not to stare. Nathaniel's face went through several expressions in rapid succession. Confusion, recognition, shock. Something that might have been horror or might have been awe. His mouth opened slightly, closed, opened again. Beside him, Claire's smile flickered, just for a second. A tiny crack in the porcelain composure. Her eyes darted from Selena to Nathaniel to the jet behind them, doing calculations that didn't add up. "Is that?" someone whispered. "The ex-wife," another voice confirmed. "But that plane. Who is she?" The guests formed a loose semicircle, champagne forgotten, wedding timeline abandoned. A woman in the front, Nathaniel's aunt, Selena remembered, actually put her hand over her mouth. Selena walked forward, not toward Nathaniel, not toward anyone, just forward into the space, claiming it the way she'd learned to claim every room she entered now. The twins matched her pace, perfectly synchronized, like they'd been born knowing how to make an entrance. A photographer, one of the official ones, judging by his badge, swung his camera toward her. Rapid-fire shots, the ex-wife in white, the billionaire's jet gleaming behind her. The children who belonged to both worlds but were clearly choosing hers in this moment. Nathaniel finally found his voice. "Selena," came out strained, strangled. You came." She smiled, cool, composed. "You invited us. It would have been rude not to." Her eyes swept over him, then to Claire, taking in the elaborate setup, the staged perfection, the performance of it all. When she looked back at Nathaniel, her expression hadn't changed. Pleasant, neutral, absolutely unreadable. "Congratulations," she said. "Beautiful ceremony setup. Really, top-notch." She didn't say what everyone was thinking. But this arrival, this just became the story everyone remembers. Claire recovered first, her breathing kicking in. "Selena, how wonderful. And the children look absolutely precious." Her voice was steady, but her eyes were doing that calculation again, trying to reconcile the woman Nathaniel had described. Broken, struggling, irrelevant, with the woman standing before her in a suit that cost more than the wedding cake. "Thank you," Selena replied smoothly. "We dressed for the occasion." A beat of silence. Heavy, electric. The entire tarmac seemed to hold its breath. Then Ariel tugged Selena's hand, her small voice cutting through the tension with perfect, innocent clarity. "Mommy, why are they all staring?" Every eye on the tarmac swiveled to Selena, waiting, wondering how she'd navigate this moment, this question, this attention. Selena looked down at her daughter, then at Aiden, then back up at the sea of faces. Wealthy, powerful, influential people who'd come to witness Nathaniel Brooks' triumph. She smiled. Not smug, not cruel, just certain. "Because we're worth looking at, baby." She straightened, squeezed both tiny hands, and walked forward into the wedding, leaving a wake of whispers and camera shutters and the unmistakable feeling that something fundamental had just shifted. Behind her, the billionaire's jet gleamed in the sunlight. Ahead of her, Nathaniel's perfect day had just become infinitely more complicated, and Selena Ward had never felt more powerful in her entire life. The Whitmore estate was exactly what Selena expected. Old money dressed in tasteful restraint. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers that didn't scream so much as murmur elegance, floral arrangements that probably cost more than her first car. The kind of venue where even the air felt expensive. Guests filed into the main hall in practiced formations. Society people who knew exactly where to stand, how to hold their champagne, when to laugh at jokes that weren't funny. The twins stayed close to Selena, Aiden's hand gripping hers a little tighter than usual, Ariel's eyes wide as she took in the grandeur. "It's like a castle," Ariel whispered. "It's like a stage," Selena murmured back. And they were the unscheduled act. Whispers followed them like perfume. Not loud enough to be rude, but present enough to be felt. Selena caught fragments as she moved through the space. "That's the ex-wife. Private jet. Can you believe? Heard she's on some tech board now. Those are his children. Look at them." She kept her expression neutral, pleasant, the perfect mask of someone who either didn't hear or didn't care. Inside, she catalogued every look, every whisper, every hastily averted glance. This was information, data, power. Nathaniel approached as they reached the cocktail area. His smile was practiced, professional, the expression he used in boardrooms when negotiations weren't going his way but he couldn't afford to show it. "Selena." He extended his hand like they were business associates meeting at a conference. "Thank you for coming. And for bringing Aiden and Ariel." She shook his hand. Brief, formal. Of course, they wanted to be here. Up close, she could see the tension around his eyes, the too tight grip on his champagne flute. He was performing composure, but barely. "That's quite an entrance you made," he said, attempting lightness. It landed hollow. "I hope we weren't late," Selena replied, her tone perfectly calibrated. Polite enough to be appropriate, cool enough to establish distance. "The flight was smooth." "Your flight." She didn't say it, but the emphasis hung there anyway. A memory surfaced, sharp and uninvited. 7 years ago, standing in their brownstone kitchen, Nathaniel on his phone, booking a trip to the Bahamas for a business retreat. She'd asked carefully if maybe they could go somewhere as a family. The twins had been infants. She'd been drowning in diapers and sleep deprivation. "Selena, be realistic," he'd said, not even looking up from his screen. "This is work. Besides, you wouldn't enjoy it. All networking, industry talk. Not really your scene. Not your scene. Translation, you don't belong." Now, standing in the Whitmore estate with a billionaire's jet behind her, Selena watched that same dismissive expression flicker across Nathaniel's face. Muscle memory of superiority. Except this time it couldn't quite land, because nothing about this version of her fit his narrative. "Well," he said, clearing his throat, "I'm glad you could make it work." "I make everything work, Nathaniel," Selena said softly. "You know that." Claire appeared like she'd been waiting in the wings for her cue. The bride, resplendent in white, holding 2 champagne flutes. Her smile was camera-ready, but her eyes were doing rapid calculations. "Selena," Claire said warmly, extending a glass. "I'm so pleased you're here. It means the world to Nathaniel. And to me." Selena accepted the champagne. "Thank you, Claire. Beautiful venue. Very you." Another memory. A charity gala, 5 years ago. Selena had worn a dress she'd saved for, navy silk, elegant but not expensive. Claire had glided past in vintage Chanel. Paused. Looked Selena over with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "How lovely," Claire had said. "Department store?" "Yes," Selena had admitted, feeling heat creep up her neck. "I thought so. You can always tell." Then, leaning in as if sharing a secret, "A word of advice. If you can't afford designer, go simple. Basic black. It photographs better than trying too hard." Nathaniel had been across the room, hadn't heard, or had chosen not to. Now, Claire's eyes kept darting to Selena's suit, to the twins in their custom outfits, to the jet visible through the estate windows. The calculation was visible. This woman wasn't supposed to be here like this. This woman was supposed to have faded into obscurity. "Your suit is stunning," Claire said, and it sounded like an accusation wrapped in velvet. "Thank you," Selena replied, Custom. The word hung there. Custom. Not department store. Not trying too hard. Custom because she could now afford to be exactly who she was. A photographer approached. Mrs. Whitmore, could we get a photo with you and the bride? Selena was already moving to decline when Claire's hand touched her arm. Of course. Selena, let's show everyone how modern families blend. It was brilliant, really. Claire was controlling the narrative, the gracious bride, welcoming the ex-wife. But Selena saw the play, saw the way Claire positioned herself in the center, the way she angled Selena slightly behind, the way she ensured her dress dominated the frame. Selena smiled for the camera. Let Claire have this small victory, because she understood something Claire didn't. The story wasn't about who stood where in a photo. The story was about who arrived in which plane. The ceremony itself was tasteful. Vows were exchanged. Rings were presented. Aiden fidgeted beside Selena. Ariel watched with solemn concentration. When Nathaniel kissed Claire, polite applause rippled through the guests. Selena clapped with everyone else. No bitterness. No longing. Just acknowledgement that something was ending and something else was beginning. Not for Nathaniel and Claire. For her. After the ceremony, guests mingled in the grand hall. The twins gravitated toward a dessert table laden with elaborate pastries. Selena stayed close but gave them space, watching as Aiden carefully selected a chocolate eclair and Ariel debated between 3 different colors of macaron. Her phone vibrated. A number she recognized, Marcus Chen, managing partner at Apex Ventures. They'd been in preliminary discussions for weeks about a new tech fund focused on underrepresented founders. She slipped away to a private lounge off the main hall, wood-paneled, leather chairs, the kind of room where powerful men made decisions over cigars and brandy. Marcus, she answered, I wasn't expecting to hear from you today. Selena. His voice was energized. I know the timing isn't ideal, but I couldn't wait. The partnership voted this morning. We want you to co-lead the fund. 100 million to start. Full decision-making authority. Your vision, your portfolio strategy. Selena walked to the window. Below, the ballroom glittered with celebration. She could see Nathaniel and Claire in the center, surrounded by well-wishers. Could see society closing ranks around them, affirming their place in the hierarchy. It's a big commitment, Marcus continued. We'd need you full-time. Board meetings, investor relations, the whole package. I know you've got other obligations, but Selena, this is the table. The actual table where decisions get made. She watched Nathaniel laugh at something someone said. Watched Claire's hand rest possessively on his arm. Watched the world that had once rejected her continue spinning without her. And felt absolutely nothing. The terms? She asked. 20% carry. Full equity stake. Your name on the fund. Ward Capital has a nice ring to it. Below, a guest approached Nathaniel, gestured toward the window where Selena stood. Nathaniel looked up. Their eyes met across the distance. His expression was unreadable confusion, maybe, or the first tremor of understanding. She'd walked out of his life with nothing, and built this. Selena smiled, not at Nathaniel, at the future unfolding in her ear, in her hands, in the choices that were now hers to make. Marcus, she said, voice steady and certain. Yes, I accept. Selena found him in the garden an hour after the ceremony. The estate grounds were immaculate, manicured hedges, stone pathways winding through beds of white roses, a fountain that murmured wealth in 3 languages. Guests were still inside, dancing and drinking and performing the rituals of high society celebration. But Nathaniel stood alone near the far edge, his back to the festivities, staring at nothing in particular. His tuxedo jacket was unbuttoned. His champagne glass sat forgotten on a stone bench. He looked like a man at his own wedding who'd forgotten why he was there. Selena approached quietly, her heels clicking softly on the pathway. She'd left the twins with Nathaniel's mother, who'd been surprisingly warm, surprisingly relieved to see her grandchildren, surprisingly cool toward Claire. Interesting dynamics there. Worth noting. Hiding at your own wedding? Selena said. That's either very honest or very concerning. Nathaniel turned, startled. For a second, his careful mask slipped and she saw something raw underneath, exhaustion, maybe, or confusion. Selena, I was just getting some air. It's a beautiful garden, she said neutrally, moving to stand beside him but maintaining distance. Not hostile, not familiar, just present. They stood in silence for a moment. Inside, music swelled. Someone laughed too loudly. The party continued without them, without needing them. Why did you invite me, Nathaniel? The question was calm, simple, but it cut through the pleasantries like a scalpel. He shifted his weight, looked down at his shoes. I told you. I thought it would be good for. Don't, Selena interrupted quietly. Don't give me the line you practiced. I'm asking what you actually want to say. Nathaniel exhaled slowly. When he looked at her, there was something different in his expression. The boardroom confidence stripped away, leaving something younger underneath. More honest. I thought it would be good for the kids, he started, then paused. And, I don't know, I thought maybe it would help us all move forward. Show them that adults can be civil. Civil, Selena repeated, testing the word. Is that what we're being? Aren't we? She considered this. I suppose. Though civility is an interesting choice when you scheduled your wedding on our anniversary. He flinched. That wasn't intentional, wasn't it?
No.
Claire chose the date. He stopped himself. She what? Selena pressed, genuinely curious. She didn't know? Or she knew and didn't care? Nathaniel's silence was answer enough. Selena almost laughed. Would have if it wasn't so perfectly, painfully fitting. Claire had chosen their anniversary deliberately.
A territorial marking.
A statement. I'm erasing you from his history. Except she'd miscalculated. Because Selena wasn't erasable anymore. You could have changed it, Selena said. You could have told her no. Nathaniel trailed off. It didn't seem worth the fight. Another memory surfaced. Their marriage, 1,000 small surrenders. Selena had learned not to fight about things that weren't worth it. The late nights, the forgotten anniversaries, the way Claire's name appeared more frequently in his conversations. All not worth the fight, until everything was gone. The twins look happy, Nathaniel said, changing direction. They've grown so much. They have. Aiden's reading above his grade level. Ariel wants to take ballet. That's wonderful. He sounded genuine, maybe even sad. I should be around for more of that. You should, Selena agreed. No judgment, just fact. Your company, Nathaniel said suddenly. Ward Analytics. I've heard people mention it. Heard you're doing well. There it was. The thing he'd been circling. The thing that had been sitting between them since she stepped off that plane. I'm doing very well, Selena confirmed. That jet. He stopped. Started again. Julian Cross. That's who you're working with. I'm on his board. Among other things. Nathaniel turned to face her fully now. His expression was complicated. Pride and regret and something that looked almost like grief. I underestimated you. Yes, Selena said simply. You did. I thought. He struggled for words. When we divorced, I thought you'd move back to your hometown. Get a job at a local firm. Live quietly. I thought that would be easier for you. Simpler. You thought I'd disappear, Selena corrected. Be conveniently invisible, so you didn't have to think about what you'd done. That's not, he stopped, because it was. They both knew it was. Selena watched him wrestle with truths he'd spent 3 years avoiding. Watched the reality of her success collide with whatever story he'd told himself about their ending. She felt something then, not satisfaction exactly, More like completion. A chapter closing that needed to close. The kids, she said softly, need a father who shows up. Not money. Not weekend visits when it's convenient. Actual presence. Can you do that? I want to, Nathaniel said. I want to try. Wanting and doing are different things. You taught me that. She turned to leave. The conversation felt finished. Everything that needed saying had been said, or at least acknowledged in the silence between words. But then his voice came again, barely above a whisper. I didn't think you'd really come. Selena stopped, didn't turn around, just stood there on the pathway, her white suit catching the last of the afternoon light, the sound of his wedding reception a distant hum. To the wedding? She asked. To any of this? The success, the jet, the board seats. I didn't think. He trailed off. She turned then, slowly, looked at him with eyes that had learned to see clearly. Past the charm, past the polish, past the version of himself he presented to the world. That's the problem, Nathaniel, she said. Her voice was quiet but absolute. You never thought I could. She left him standing there in the garden with the weight of his own miscalculation. As she walked back toward the reception hall, she caught her reflection in one of the estate's windows. The woman looking back was someone she recognized now. Strong, certain, undiminished. Not despite what Nathaniel had done. Because of what she'd done after. Inside, Aiden and Ariel were spinning on the dance floor with Nathaniel's mother, their laughter bright and uncomplicated. They saw her and waved, faces glowing. Selena waved back. Then she stepped into the ballroom, into the light and music and the beautiful chaos of celebration. She'd come to this wedding to prove something. Not to Nathaniel, not to Claire, not even to the society that had once dismissed her. She'd come to prove it to herself. Mission accomplished. The ballroom transformed as evening descended. Chandeliers dimmed to romantic amber. Candles flickered on every table like captured stars. A live orchestra, string quartet plus piano, played something classical and expensive. The kind of music that made even small talk feel significant. Selena had been seated at a reserved table near the front. Not at the head table, that would have been too much, but close enough to be visible. Strategic placement. She wondered who'd made that call. Nathaniel trying to be magnanimous? Or Claire keeping potential threats close? Aiden climbed into her lap, tired from dancing with his grandmother. His small body was warm, heavy with the particular exhaustion of children who've had too much excitement. Ariel stayed in her chair, carefully arranging rose petals from the centerpiece into patterns, sorting them by size, by color, by some internal logic only she understood. Mama, when can we go home? Aiden whispered against her shoulder. Soon, baby, Selena murmured. After the important parts. This isn't important? He sounded genuinely confused. Smart child. Different kind of important, she clarified. Around them, the ballroom buzzed with controlled energy. Guests found their seats. The dance floor cleared. The MC's voice boomed. Ladies and gentlemen, for the first time as husband and wife, Mr. and Mrs. Nathaniel Brooks. The applause was thunderous. Nathaniel and Claire swept onto the dance floor, him in his perfectly tailored tuxedo, her in that cathedral train gown that probably required 3 people to bustle. They moved together with practiced grace, the kind of coordination that came from expensive dance lessons and careful rehearsal. They looked perfect, like something out of a magazine, like exactly what they were supposed to be. And yet, eyes kept drifting to Selena's table. Not obviously. Society people were too well-bred for obvious staring. But she felt it. The quick glances, the lingering gazes, the heads leaning together as whispers were exchanged behind champagne flutes. The woman in white at the front table. The ex-wife who wasn't supposed to be here like this. The ghost at the feast who'd arrived in flesh and power and a billionaire's jet. Ariel looked up from her rose petals. Mama, people keep looking at us. I know, sweetheart. Why? Because we're interesting, Selena said simply. More interesting than the bride? Selena smiled. What do you think? Ariel considered this with the seriousness of a 3-year-old philosopher. I think her dress is pretty. But we came in an airplane. We did. So yes, more interesting. The official photographer, a thin man with expensive equipment and an eye for narrative, circled the ballroom, capturing moments. The first dance, the guests, the ambient romance of it all. Then his lens found Selena. She didn't pose, didn't perform, just sat there with Aiden on her lap, one arm wrapped around him, the other hand resting on the table beside Ariel's rose petal arrangements. Her white suit was luminous against the warm lighting. Her expression was calm, composed, almost meditative. A woman completely at peace with her presence. Behind her, just visible in the frame, Nathaniel and Claire danced. Click. The photographer lowered his camera, looked at his screen, and smiled. He'd just captured something. Not just a photo, a story. The juxtaposition was perfect. The bride and groom in their orchestrated romance, and mere feet away, the ex-wife, regal, serene, watching with the quiet confidence of someone who no longer needed to compete. That photo would be everywhere by morning. Selena knew it, could already see the headlines. Ex-wife crashes wedding in style. Billionaire jet arrival steals thunder from society wedding. Who is Selena Ward? Let them write what they wanted. She knew the truth. She hadn't crashed anything. She'd been invited, and she'd simply shown up as herself. The first dance ended. Applause rippled through the room. Nathaniel and Claire separated, smiling, radiant. The MC returned to the microphone. And now, a toast from the groom. Nathaniel accepted a champagne flute, climbed the small platform at the head of the room. His smile was camera-ready, his posture confident. He began the expected speech, thanking guests, praising Claire, acknowledging family. Then he got to the delicate part. I also want to thank, he paused. His eyes found Selena's table. I want to thank Selena for being here today, for bringing Aiden and Ariel, for showing that we can all move forward with grace and... His voice caught, just slightly, a tiny stumble over her name, over the words he'd rehearsed but hadn't fully meant. The room shifted, that peculiar atmospheric change when a crowd senses something beneath the surface. Claire, standing beside him, caught it too. Her smile remained fixed but her eyes flickered. A momentary calculation, a recognition of something unwelcome. Nathaniel recovered quickly, with grace and maturity, to family in all its forms. Glasses raised. To family. But the moment had been noticed, logged, added to the growing narrative that this wedding wasn't quite as perfect as it appeared. After the toast, the dancing resumed. Guests mingled. Aiden fell asleep on Selena's lap. Ariel had moved on from rose petals to watching the musicians with rapt attention. Then Claire appeared. She changed into her reception dress. Still white, but simpler, easier to move in. She held 2 champagne flutes, her expression carefully neutral as she approached Selena's table. Mind if I sit? Selena gestured to the empty chair. It's your wedding. Claire sat, handed Selena one of the glasses. For a moment, they both watched the dance floor. Guests swaying, laughing, performing happiness. That was quite an entrance today, Claire said finally. Thank you. I meant it as an observation, not a compliment. Selena smiled slightly. I know. Claire turned to look at her directly. The mask of the gracious bride had slipped, revealing something sharper underneath. Why did you really come, Selena? Because I was invited.
No.
Why did you really come? Like that, in that plane, dressed like... She gestured vaguely at Selena's suit. Like you were trying to make a point. I wasn't trying to make a point, Selena said calmly. I was simply showing up as I am now. If that felt like a point to you, Perhaps that says more about your expectations than my intentions. Claire's jaw tightened. She took a long sip of champagne. When she spoke again, her voice was quieter, almost vulnerable. He's still not over you. The words hung in the air between them. Selena turned to look at Claire fully now. Saw not just the bride, not just the rival, but a woman who'd married someone who might not be fully present. Someone who'd won a prize that came with complications she hadn't anticipated. Then you should have made sure he was before you said yes, Selena replied. Her voice wasn't cruel, just honest, factual. Claire's expression flickered. Anger, hurt, recognition. That's not fair. No, Selena agreed. It's not, but it's true. They sat in silence for a moment. Around them, the wedding continued. Nathaniel was across the room, talking to investors, performing the role of happy groom. But his eyes kept drifting back to their table. Claire saw it too. I can't compete with a ghost. You're not competing with a ghost, Selena said. You're competing with his regret. That's different. And harder. She shifted Aiden in her arms, preparing to stand. This conversation had gone as far as it needed to, maybe further. For what it's worth, Selena added, I hope you're happy, Claire.
I genuinely do.
But happiness isn't something you get by winning. It's something you build. And you can't build it on someone else's foundation. She stood, gathering Aiden into her arms. Ariel slipped her small hand into Selena's free one. Claire stayed seated, champagne glass empty, staring at nothing. Selena walked toward the exit, her children close, the ballroom lights catching her white suit one last time. Behind her, two worlds continued their careful dance, pretending not to notice that the music had changed. The reception had reached that peculiar twilight hour when celebrations begin their slow dissolution. The orchestra played softer now, melodies meant for swaying rather than dancing. Half the guests had already departed, trailing out to waiting cars with loosened ties and champagne-hazed smiles. The remaining few clustered in small groups, voices lower, laughter less performative. Selena had moved to a quiet corner near the terrace doors. Aiden slept against her shoulder, his breathing deep and steady. Ariel dozed in the chair beside her, head pillowed on Selena's jacket, small fingers still clutching a rescued rose petal. The twins had lasted longer than she'd expected. Nearly 7 hours of wedding spectacle. They'd been champions. She checked her phone. The jet crew had messaged. Ready whenever she was.
No rush.
No pressure. Just quiet readiness, the kind of service that came with Julian's world. Her world now, too. Footsteps approached. Selena looked up. Claire stood there, still in her reception dress but transformed somehow. Smaller, more human. She'd removed her veil. Her hair had loosened from its elaborate updo. She looked tired. Real. May I? Claire gestured to the empty chair. Selena nodded. For a long moment, neither spoke. Just two women at the end of a complicated day, watching the remnants of a party neither had fully enjoyed. They're beautiful when they sleep, Claire said finally, looking at the twins. Peaceful. They are. Claire twisted her wedding ring, new, unfamiliar, on her finger. I don't know how to do this. Do what? Any of it. Be a stepmother. Navigate this situation. I've never... She stopped, collected herself. I've never had to share someone before. Not like this. Selena could have said something cutting. Could have pointed out that Claire had pursued a man who came with complications, with history, with children who would always tie him to someone else. But she was tired, and cruelty, she'd learned, was just another form of caring too much. It's not about sharing, Selena said quietly. It's about boundaries, and respect, and putting the children first, even when it's inconvenient. Claire looked at her. Is that what you did? Put them first. Every single day. Even the days it nearly broke me. Something shifted in Claire's expression, recognition, maybe, or the beginning of understanding. I want to be good at this. For them. For Nathaniel. I just don't know. You start by not making them choose, Selena interrupted gently. Between households, between parents, between versions of family. You let them love who they love without guilt. You don't speak badly about me in front of them, and I won't speak badly about you. I wouldn't. You might. In a moment of frustration. In an argument. It happens. Selena shifted Aiden slightly, careful not to wake him. Motherhood, even stepmotherhood, is learning to swallow things you want to say because saying them would hurt someone smaller than you. Claire nodded slowly. Will you help me? With them? I don't want to overstep, but I also don't want to be absent. There has to be a middle ground. There is, Selena confirmed. We'll find it. For Aiden and Ariel's sake. Not for Nathaniel's. Not for ours. For theirs. Thank you, Claire whispered, and for the first time all day she sounded genuine. Vulnerable. Human beneath the bride costume. They sat in silence for a moment longer. The competition had dissolved, not because either had won, but because they'd both realized there was never a prize worth fighting for. Just two children who needed adults to act like adults. I should go, Selena said. The twins are exhausted. Long day. Claire stood when Selena did. Extended her hand. For what it's worth, I understand now why he couldn't let you go completely. You're more than I expected. Selena shook her hand. Brief but firm. I hope you're happy, Claire. Genuinely. I hope you are too. Selena gathered Ariel into her other arm. One twin on each side. Their weight familiar and grounding. She scanned the room for her belongings, for the small clutch purse she'd brought, for any final details before departure. Through the terrace doors, she saw him. Nathaniel stood alone in the garden, same spot as earlier. His jacket was off, his tie loosened. He looked like a man at the end of something, though whether it was the wedding or something larger, Selena couldn't tell. She could leave. Should leave, probably. The day was done. The statement made. The circle closed. But something pulled her outside. Not unfinished business. Something else. Completion, maybe. Or just the need to mark the ending properly. She walked out slowly, careful with the sleeping children. Nathaniel heard her approach, turned. Selena. He looked at the twins in her arms. They're out. Long day for little ones. For all of us. He tried to smile. Failed. They stood there, the garden quiet around them, the reception a distant murmur. Above them, stars were emerging. The same stars that had witnessed their wedding 12 years ago. The same stars that would witness whatever came next. Thank you for coming, Nathaniel said. I know it wasn't easy. It was easier than you think. He looked at her. Really looked, perhaps for the first time all day. Saw the woman she'd become. The distance she'd traveled. The version of her that existed completely independent of him. I handled things badly, he said. The divorce. The settlement. Everything. Yes, Selena agreed. You did.
I'm sorry.
I know. And she did. Could hear it in his voice. See it in his shoulders. But his apology didn't change anything. Didn't undo years of dismissal and diminishment. Didn't erase the nights she'd cried herself to sleep wondering if she was enough. This day isn't about you anymore, Selena said quietly. Nathaniel blinked. What? Today. This wedding. My presence here. None of it is about you. She shifted Aiden, whose head lolled against her shoulder. It's about showing my children what resilience looks like. What dignity looks like. What it means to walk back into a place that hurt you and stand there unbowed. She turned to leave. Selena. Be a good father, Nathaniel. That's all that matters now. Show up for them. Actually show up. I will. I promise. She looked back one last time. Then we don't need to have this conversation again. Inside, she collected her things. Kissed Aiden's forehead. Then Ariel's. Their small bodies stayed relaxed in sleep, trusting her to carry them safely. The remaining guests had thinned to nearly nothing. A few stragglers. The wedding planner directing cleanup. Claire somewhere in the interior rooms, probably changing, probably exhausted. Selena walked through the grand hall one final time. Past the elaborate floral arrangements. Past the place settings that cost more than her first month's rent. Past the remnants of a celebration that had been designed to erase her. She'd come back into this world, looked it in the eye, and walked out on her own terms. The jet was waiting, lights glowing warmly on the tarmac, stairs down, crew ready. Julian had messaged, "Hope it went well. See you at the board meeting." Selena climbed the stairs slowly, carefully, precious cargo in her arms. The flight attendant helped settle the twins into their seats, brought blankets, dimmed the cabin lights. As the jet engines hummed to life, Selena looked out the window one last time. The Whitmore estate glowed in the distance. Beautiful, perfect, already fading. She buckled her seatbelt, closed her eyes. When she opened them again, they were airborne. Below, the past grew smaller. Ahead, the future waited. Vast, uncertain, entirely hers to write. The jet leveled at cruising altitude, and the world below transformed into a tapestry of lights. Highways like luminous threads, cities blooming in the darkness, the occasional airplane passing beneath them like a slower, earthbound thing. Selena exhaled, the first real breath she'd taken in hours. Aiden and Ariel slept in seats that reclined into beds, silk-lined and cloud-soft. Blankets tucked around them. Rose petals, Ariel had insisted on bringing them, scattered on the small table between them. Their faces were peaceful, untroubled, dreaming of airplane rides and fancy parties, and a day they'd remember in fragments. Across from Selena sat Maya-chan, her business partner, her friend, the woman who'd taken a chance on Ward Analytics when it was just a name and a dream. Maya had accompanied her today, quiet support in the background, handling logistics and watching the twins when Selena needed a moment. She'd changed out of her formal dress into comfortable clothes, kicked off her heels, and now sat with a champagne flute, watching Selena with an expression that was part amusement, part admiration. "You know," Maya said, swirling her champagne, "you didn't have to go." Selena looked up from where she'd been watching the twins sleep. "Didn't I? You already won." Maya gestured vaguely toward the window, toward the wedding they'd left behind. "You've got the board seat, the company, Julian's backing, $100 million fund with your name on it. You could have sent a polite decline and let Nathaniel Brooks marry his society princess without an audience." Selena considered this. The cabin was quiet except for the gentle hum of engines, the whisper of recycled air, the occasional rustle of the twins shifting in sleep. "It wasn't about winning," she said finally.
No. No.
Selena looked at Aiden, then Ariel. "This was about showing my children what power looks like when it forgives, but doesn't forget." Maya raised an eyebrow. "That's a hell of a lesson for 3-year-olds. They won't understand it now, but someday." Selena paused, choosing her words carefully. "Someday they'll remember that their mother was invited to witness her replacement, and she showed up anyway. Not bitter, not broken, not diminished. She showed up whole. In a billionaire's jet," Maya added with a slight smile. "In a billionaire's jet," Selena confirmed. "Because why the hell not?" They both laughed. Quiet, tired, the kind of laughter that comes at the end of something significant. The flight attendant appeared with warm towels, a light dinner, sparkling water for Selena. She ate slowly, tasting nothing, her mind already moving forward. The wedding was behind her now, filed away, processed, done. What mattered was what came next. Maya seemed to sense the shift. "You're already planning something. Always. Want to share?" Selena set down her fork. "Do you remember what it felt like? Right after my divorce? Scrambling for clients, working from that closet office, wondering if I'd make rent. Vividly." You lived on instant ramen and spite. Exactly. Selena's expression grew serious. I was lucky. I had a PhD, industry connections, a support system, but most single mothers don't. They're working minimum wage, drowning in childcare costs, locked out of tech careers because they don't have the credentials or the network or the time to build them. Maya leaned forward. You want to change that. I want to build something, Selena corrected. A foundation, training programs, mentorship, seed funding for single mothers starting tech businesses, childcare support, the things I wish had existed when I was clawing my way back. That's ambitious. So was showing up to my ex-husband's wedding in a private jet. Selena smiled. I'm done thinking small. Maya studied her for a moment. You're serious. Completely. Then I'm in. Whatever you need. Selena pulled out her laptop, the same battered device she'd used to build Ward Analytics, though she'd upgraded the internals several times. Superstition, maybe, or just sentiment. This machine had been there for every late night, every breakthrough, every failure and recovery. She opened a new email. Subject line, Foundation Proposal Review Requested. The recipient list included Julian Cross, 3 other board members from his company, and 2 venture capitalists she'd been cultivating relationships with. People with money, people with influence, people who could turn an idea into infrastructure. She wrote quickly, thoughts flowing faster than her fingers could type. Dear colleagues, I'm writing to propose a new initiative, the Ward Foundation for Women in Tech. Our mission would be to provide training, mentorship, seed funding, and wraparound support, including childcare, for single mothers seeking to enter or advance in technology careers. The market opportunity is significant. The social impact is measurable. And the personal investment for me is absolute. I'm prepared to commit initial funding and leadership. I'm seeking partners who share this vision and can help scale it beyond what any single person could achieve. Attached is a preliminary proposal. I welcome your thoughts, your challenges, your questions. Let's build something that matters. Selena Ward. She attached the document she'd been working on for weeks, secretly in stolen moments between board meetings and client calls. 30 pages of research, financial projections, program design, potential partnerships. She hovered over the send button. This was different than the wedding. Different than the jet, the suit, the carefully orchestrated arrival. This was about building something that would outlast any single moment of triumph. Something that would change lives beyond her own. She clicked send. The email disappeared into the digital void. Within seconds, her phone buzzed. Julian, reading now. Call you in the morning. This is important. Selena smiled. Maya had dozed off in her seat, champagne glass empty beside her. The twins slept on, dreaming their innocent dreams. The jet carried them through darkness toward home, toward the apartment that was theirs, the life that was theirs, the future that was entirely theirs to shape. Selena returned to the window. Below, the world moved in its patterns, cars on highways, ships in harbors, the organized chaos of human civilization. From this height, everything looked small, manageable, like pieces on a board that could be moved with intention. She thought about Nathaniel waking up tomorrow morning married to Claire. Thought about the society pages that would run photos of their perfect wedding. Thought about the whispers that would follow, about the ex-wife, the jet, the moment everything shifted. Let them whisper. She'd already moved on to the next game. The past was below her now, not erased, not forgotten, but incorporated. Every struggle, every humiliation, every moment of doubt, they'd all been necessary. They'd forged her into someone who could stand in a billroom full of people who'd dismissed her and feel nothing but certainty. Ahead, the sky was beginning to lighten. Dawn approaching. A new day. New opportunities. New battles to fight, but ones she'd chosen herself. Ariel stirred, made a small sound, settled back into sleep. Selena reached over, brushed a curl from her daughter's forehead. We're going to be okay. she whispered to her sleeping children. Better than okay. We're going to be extraordinary. The jet engines hummed their agreement. Below her, the past faded into memory, valuable, instructive, but no longer controlling. Ahead of her stretched something vast and unwritten. Not just success. Not just revenge or vindication or any single victory. Empire. Built on her own terms. Sustained by her own strength. Shared with the people she chose to elevate. Selena Ward closed her laptop, settled into her seat, and watched the sun begin to rise over the horizon. The invitation had been a catalyst. The arrival had been a statement. But this flight toward tomorrow, toward purpose, toward building something that mattered, this was the real triumph. She'd walked back into Nathaniel's world to show him what he'd lost. Now she was flying toward her own world, ready to show everyone what she'd found. Herself, whole, powerful, free, and just getting started. The end.
Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.